Welcome everybody to the Feast of Words. As some of you know, my academic degrees were in linguistics and literacy studies, so this is somewhat of a special topic to me. There's two quotes relevant to it that have just always stood out to me a lot. The second one I won't go over now because the whole presentation will be somewhat themed about it. But the first one was the one part of our prayer that talks about how the holy ecstasy of prayer may fill our souls and become a prayer that shall rise above words and letters and transcend the murmur of sounds and syllables. Certainly, there's been times for me, sometimes with feast readings and whatnot, where I've just kind of zoned out and kind of let everything blur back down into sounds and syllables. But we know the holy writings are just immensely powerful, and much more than that, and we want to do everything we can to help them transcend that. And so in my studies in literacy, one thing that always kept coming up was the concept of a story and what a uniquely human characteristic storytelling is, and just how powerful stories are with connecting with the human brain. And I know last year there were a number of requests for more stories, specifically stories involving Abdul Baha, to be incorporated into the feast. So I thought I would experiment with connecting the feast readings today with some story elements, particularly ones that center on that second quote. And also it was just Amazon Prime Day, and so there's also some themes of materialism and stuff. So we'll see how this works. Hopefully it'll make it more memorable for people, or possibly I'll just never be asked to host Feast again, but possibly both. Who knows? But let's see. For your Feast of Words, I wanted to start here with a story about Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. I had quite an adventure during this year's Prime Day sales event. Let me tell you about it. It all started when I got a fancy new room before 1000. I went over to my friend Julie's house to tell her about it. Oh my God, Julie. I can't believe you're still using the Roomba 3000. You didn't upgrade to the new Roomba 4000 model, like I did. Why would you not?
No, I'm fine. I guess I'm just still happy with my 3000 model for now. It seems to do everything I need just fine. You know, I was just reading a great story about the master. I think we should read it together.
One day, he was to entertain the governor of Akka. His wife felt that his coat was hardly worthy of the occasion. Well ahead of time, she went to the tailor where she ordered a fine coat, thinking that, with his lack of self-consciousness, he would surely not notice that his old coat was missing. He desired, after all, only to be scrupulously clean. The new garment was laid out at the proper time. But, the master went searching for his own coat. He asked for it, insisting that the one laid out was not his. His wife attempted to explain the new coat. But, he would have none of it. And he told her why. But think of this. For the price of this coat, you can buy 5 such as I ordinarily use. And do you think I would spend so much money upon a coat which only I shall wear? If you think I need a new one, very well, but send this back and have the tailor make me for this price 5 such as I usually have. Then, you see, I shall not only have a new one, but I shall have 4 to give to others.
When I got home and was getting ready for bed, I went to do my evening readings. I picked up a passage from Gleanings. It read,
Why, then, exhibit such greed in amassing the treasures of the earth, when your days are numbered and your chance is well nigh lost? Will ye not, then, O heedless ones, shake off your slumber?
I continued my evening readings. I switched to Paris Talks. It read,
All around us today we see how man surrounds himself with every modern convenience and luxury, and denies nothing to the physical and material side of his nature. But, take heed, lest in thinking too earnestly of the things of the body you forget the things of the soul, for material advantages do not elevate the spirit of a man. Perfection in worldly things is a joy to the body of a man. But, in no wise does it glorify his soul.
I went to sleep deep in contemplation. Was I getting sucked into the world of materialism? Was I making a huge mistake? If the master would not accept even his wife's new coat, why, then, should I have a shiny new room before 1,000? If only I had bought 5 coats instead. When I awoke the next day, I went straight down to my computer. I logged onto eBay and sold my new Roomba. It was just going to be me, my trusty mop, and my broom. For a week, things were great. Although, a week later, my house had become considerably messier. For my morning readings I read from the Akdats.
God hath enjoined upon you to observe the utmost cleanliness. To the extent of washing what is soiled with dust, let alone with hardened dirt and similar defilement. Fear him, and be of those who are pure. Should the garb of anyone be visibly sullied, his prayers shall not ascend to God, and the celestial concourse will turn away from him. Make use of rose water, and of pure perfume. This, indeed, is that which God hath loved from the beginning that hath no beginning. In order that there may be diffused from you what your Lord, the incomparable, the all-wise, desireth.
At that moment, I got a phone call from my friend Dana. She asked me if I was going to join for the cluster reflection gathering. I thought about the reading. I decided it would be better for me to spend the day cleaning instead. I cleaned and cleaned, until I finally had a clean house again. Exhausted, I sat down to do more readings. I opened the Promulgation of Universal Peace.
Baha'u'llah has even said that occupation and labor are devotion. All humanity must obtain a livelihood by sweat of the brow and bodily exertion. At the same time, seeking to lift the burden of others. Striving to be the source of comfort to souls, and facilitating the means of living. This in itself is devotion to God.
I had to think deeply about this one. I thought about all the people who worked together to design and build my room before 1,000. I thought about the devotion they put into creating a vacuum that could clean my house for me. The desire they had to lift my burdens and to be a source of comfort to me. I read more from the actors.
Knowledge is as wings to man's life, and a ladder for his ascent. Its acquisition is incumbent upon everyone. The knowledge of such sciences, however, should be acquired as can profit the peoples of the earth. And, not those which begin with words and end with words.
Originally, knowledge from science had unlocked a more productive way for me to complete my house cleaning. But, through my choices, and my desire to become less materialistic, had that knowledge instead become something that simply began with words and ended with words. I had a lot to think about. I read further in the actors.
How many a man hath secluded himself in the climes of India, denied himself the things that God hath decreed as lawful, imposed upon himself austerities and mortifications, and hath not been remembered by God, the revealer of verses. Make not your deeds as snares wherewith to entrap the object of your aspiration, and deprive not yourselves of this ultimate objective for which have ever yearned all such as have drawn nigh unto God. Say, the very life of all deeds is my good pleasure, and all things depend upon mine acceptance. Read ye the tablets that ye may know what hath been purposed in the books of God, the all-glorious, the ever-bounteous. He who attaineth to my love hath title to a throne of gold, to sit thereon in honor over all the world.
I knew my purpose would come from reading the tablets and reflecting deeply about their meaning. That it wasn't just about living the simplest and most austere life I could. But how was I to make sense of this? If Abdul-Bahai could not even accept his wife's cloak, should I not also live so simply? How could I be content living a life of ease, of comfort, and fancy robot cleaners? I went back to the master's words in Paris talks.
If a man is successful in his business, art, or profession, he is thereby enabled to increase his physical well-being, and to give his body the amount of ease and comfort in which it delights. It is indeed a good and praiseworthy thing to progress materially. But, in so doing, let us not neglect the more important spiritual progress, and close our eyes to the divine light shining in our midst.
I thought more about the cloak the master's wife had bought him. It didn't actually increase his ease. It didn't increase his comfort. It didn't increase his productivity. It didn't increase his efficiency. It didn't increase his capacity to serve God. I then came across some guidance from the house which succinctly resolved the contradictions I had been struggling with. It read,
If wealth and prosperity become the means of service at God's threshold, it is highly meritorious. Otherwise, it would be better to avoid them.
To conclude my day, and to conclude my story, I put on some uplifting music and spent a moment meditating upon all my most recent purchases. How, specifically, were they contributing to my ability to be of service to God? And perhaps you might also want to meditate with me. What about your most recent purchases? How can you use them to become your means of service at God's threshold?
To attain to but a dewdrop of the crystal waters of divine knowledge that would as readily realize that true life is not the life of the flesh, but the life of the spirit. The purpose of God in creating man hath been and will ever be to enable him to know his creator and to attain his presence, and to attain his presence. Wert thou to attain to but a dewdrop of the crystal waters of divine knowledge that would as readily realize that true life is not the life of the flesh, but the life of the spirit. To this most excellent aim, this supreme objective, all the heavenly books and the divinely revealed and weighty scriptures unequivocally